Darkness is not just the absence of light. It is something more, something deeper, a force that lingers in every corner, waiting for the sun to set and the world to quiet down. When the last rays fade, darkness seeps in, filling the spaces we thought were safe. It's a presence, a weight pressing in from all sides. People think it's empty, but it's full, alive, patient, watching. It moves with purpose, settling into the cracks of our homes and the crevices of our minds, always waiting for us to notice. It learns your fears, gives them shape, and sets them before you. In the light, we rule. We feel in control, protected by the clarity that brightness brings. But in the dark, our confidence fades, and our secrets are exposed. In the dark, we're guests in an ancient kingdom. Tonight, I finally understand. The darkness is old, older than memory, and it welcomes us as strangers, never as friends. This darkness is different, intelligent, cruel, suffocating. My home is swallowed whole, the world outside erased. The familiar boundaries of my life dissolve, leaving only uncertainty and dread. The silence is a canvas, and the darkness paints it with sounds meant only for me. Familiar objects become menacing shapes. My reflection is gone, replaced by an endless void. Every shadow seems to move. Every creak becomes a whisper from the dark. I am utterly alone, yet never more watched. The darkness is not just around me, it's inside, whispering to the parts I've tried to forget. It knows my secrets, my regrets, and it's waiting, patient, relentless, and always hungry for more. The change was instant, a sharp click, and everything vanished. One moment, the world was familiar and safe, bathed in the soft glow of evening lights. The next, it was gone, swallowed by a darkness so complete it felt unnatural. The lamp, the TV, the hum of the fridge, all snuffed out, as if erased from existence. The silence hit like a blow, heavy and absolute, my eyes blindfolded by blackness. Even the gentle background noises I'd always ignored were gone, leaving only the sound of my own heartbeat. I sat frozen, heart pounding, breath shallow and quick. Just a power outage, I told myself, trying to sound calm, but my body knew better. My muscles tensed, every instinct screaming that something was wrong, that this was more than a simple blackout. The air was colder, metallic, wrong. My senses strained in the silence. Every creak, every draft felt like a warning, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. This wasn't a normal blackout. There were no outside sounds, no neighbors' voices, no distant city glow. The world beyond my walls was just as silent, just as dark, as if time itself had stopped. It was as if only my house had been swallowed by the abyss. I was cut off, isolated, left alone in a void that felt endless and suffocating. The darkness was a wall, a prison with no doors or windows. I was trapped inside it, unable to escape, every second stretching out longer than the last. And it was closing in, pressing tighter, as if the night itself was alive and hungry, waiting for me to make a move. I forced myself to stand, legs trembling, reaching for the wall to steady myself. I needed light, anything to push back the blackness. Each step toward the kitchen felt like crossing a hostile, unknown land. Then I heard it, a slow, rhythmic breath, not my own. Inhale, exhale. The house was breathing. The sound was everywhere. Walls, floor, ceiling. My home had become the ribcage of something vast and alive. The feeling of being watched grew into certainty. I couldn't move, pinned by the awareness of something ancient. With each exhale, cold air washed over me, metallic and foul. The darkness had a sound, a smell, a presence. It was alive, and it knew I was there, and it was waiting. I found the courage to move, but my goal was no longer light, it was escape. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get as far away from that suffocating darkness as possible, but my body felt heavy, as if the shadows themselves were trying to hold me back. I crept toward the front door, hands tracing the wall, fingertips searching for any sign of safety. Each step felt like it echoed through the silence, betraying my presence to whatever waited in the dark. The breathing continued, slow and unnatural, and the air grew colder as I neared the hall. My breath came out in visible puffs, the chill biting at my skin, making me shiver uncontrollably. At the far end, a shape appeared, darker than the dark, tall, thin, unmoving. It seemed to absorb the faint light, a silhouette that shouldn't exist, not a trick of the eyes, not the coat rack. This had depth, presence. It was undeniably real, and it radiated a sense of intent that made my skin crawl. A void in human form, a silent sentinel. It stood as if guarding the darkness, blocking my only path to freedom. My heart hammered so loudly I thought it might give me away. The house's breathing faded, replaced by a focused silence from the figure, as if the entire world was holding its breath with me. It didn't move or speak, it just watched, its attention fixed on me with an intensity that felt almost physical. I knew it could see me perfectly, every tremor, every shallow breath. I felt exposed, as if there was nowhere left to hide. The fear was sharp, pure terror, freezing me in place. My mind raced, desperate for a way out, but my body refused to obey. The darkness had given birth to something, or let something in. It was as if the house itself had become a gateway for this presence. It was the source of the cold, the silence, the malevolence. The air felt thick with its intent, pressing in on me from all sides, and it was hunting me. I realized, in that moment, I was not alone, and I might never be again. The shadow unlocked a memory. Me, a child, dreading my closet. Even in daylight, its darkness felt alive, watching. My parents laughed off my fear, but I knew better. During a stormy blackout, I stared at the closet's crack of blackness, convinced something waited inside. I made a silent bargain. I'd never look too closely, never challenge it, if it stayed inside. The closet became its kingdom, as long as it left me alone. The fear was so intense, I hid under the covers until morning. That bargain was my only comfort. I never thought it would matter again. But the darkness remembers. Now, facing the shadow, I realized the bargain was real, and I broke it. I grew up, forgot my promise, dismissed it as childish. But the darkness waited, patient, until tonight. The shadow is the thing from the closet, grown tall. The house's breathing is a predator's chuckle. The darkness feeds on my fear, using my own memories against me. It wears the form of our nightmares, tailored for each of us. My legs weaken, the cold seeps in. The shadow's presence says, "You ran, but you can't hide. The time for payment has come." Panic broke my paralysis. I had to run, to fight, to escape. The front door was my only hope, but the shadow blocked the way. I lunged forward, eyes shut, praying for the doorknob. The hallway stretched impossibly long, my progress slowed to a crawl. The walls pressed in, the ceiling lowered. I was being squeezed, trapped. The house was alive, contorting to crush me. The breathing grew louder, the air thick with decay. My sprint slowed to a crawl, the walls scraping my skin. The shadow watched, unmoving. The house was its accomplice, a living trap. There was no escape. The path forward shrank to nothing. The path behind was gone. I was being buried alive in my own home. The walls pinned me, holding me fast. I struggled, but it was useless, utterly trapped. My energy dissolved into despair. The shadow watched, never needing to move. The house and my fear did all the work. I slumped, strength gone, the house's breath hot on my face. The darkness was inside and out, inescapable. My attempts to escape were a child's game. The darkness had always been in control, feeding on my panic. The chase was its cruel finale. Now, only silence and waiting remained. Suddenly, the pressure vanished. The hallway returned to normal, but the darkness remained. I collapsed, gasping, hope flickering. The shadow was gone. The house was silent. But this silence was heavy, expectant. My fear had no focus now. It was everywhere. The darkness gathered, ready for one final revelation. Then, a voice whispered, not from the hall, but inside my mind. "You closed the door," it rasped. "But you never locked it." The voice was the shadow, the closet, the darkness itself. My sanity shattered. I tried to scream, but the world dissolved. The darkness became everything. No up, no down, no self. The last spark of hope was extinguished. The whisper was the last thing I knew before I became nothing.
My eyes opened to a suffocating blackness, thick, heavy, almost physical. It pressed in from every side, swallowing sound and sense as if the world itself had been erased and replaced by this endless, crushing void. I couldn't tell if my eyes were truly open or if I was still trapped in some nightmare, unable to wake. I tried to move, but my body felt distant, sluggish, as if I was underwater or wrapped in invisible chains. A low, ancient hum vibrated through the floor, rattling my bones. The sound was everywhere and nowhere, a deep resonance that seemed to come from the very heart of the darkness itself. I was lying on something hard, yet it pulsed beneath me as if alive. Panic crept in, icy and sharp, crawling up my spine. The surface felt wrong, too warm, too yielding, as if it might swallow me whole if I stayed too long. I reached out, nothing but cold, empty air. My fingers grasped at shadows, searching for an edge, a wall, anything solid. The hum grew louder, a living presence in the void, vibrating through my skin and into my skull. No memory of how I got here, just a blank, aching gap where my past should be. The air tasted metallic, stale, each breath scraping my throat. I felt as if I'd been here forever, suspended in this timeless, airless place. I pushed myself up, feeling the floor's slow, rhythmic rise and fall, like the chest of a sleeping beast. The sensation was wrong. Floors shouldn't breathe. The movement was subtle, but unmistakable. A reminder that I was not alone, not truly. I forced myself to stand, legs shaking, arms outstretched in the perfect black. Each step, the floor pulsed beneath me, a constant, unnerving reminder that I was walking on something alive, something that might awaken at any moment. My heart pounded in my chest, echoing the rhythm beneath my feet. I was utterly alone, adrift in a place that shouldn't exist. The void pressed in, silent and absolute, swallowing every sound I made. I called out, but my voice was devoured by the darkness, leaving only the echo of my own fear. I was trapped, a speck on the skin of something vast and alive. The realization settled over me like a shroud. I was not just lost, I was at the mercy of something ancient, something that watched and waited in the endless dark. A faint, sickly light bled into the darkness, revealing my prison. It wasn't the kind of light that brought comfort or hope. It was the color of old bruises, leaking through cracks I couldn't see, painting everything in a queasy, unnatural glow. I was in a room, if you could even call it that. There were no corners, no edges, just smooth, curving walls that merged seamlessly into the floor and ceiling, as if the entire space had been grown rather than built. The walls were mottled, fleshy, and they pulsed in time with the floor beneath my feet, as if the whole chamber was breathing around me. Thick, ropey veins throbbed across their surface, snaking in unpredictable patterns, each beat sending a shiver through the room. The room was alive, not just metaphorically, but truly, horribly alive. Every inch of it seemed to respond to my presence. The realization hit me hard, a cold spike of terror in my gut. I stumbled back, breath caught in my chest, as if the air itself was too thick to inhale. The air was thick, coppery, tinged with the scent of blood and something far older. It made my stomach churn, my head swim with dizziness. The hum in the air grew louder, morphing into a monstrous heartbeat. Thump, 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 echoing through the walls and floor, vibrating in my bones. My own heart tried to match its tempo, racing in panic as if it was being pulled into sync with the living chamber itself. I reached out almost against my will and touched the wall. It was warm, damp, feverish, like pressing my hand against the skin of something feverish and alive. The veins beneath my fingers darkened and pulsed faster at my touch, as if the room was aware of me, responding to my presence with a shudder of excitement or hunger. I snatched my hand back, revulsion and nausea rising in my throat. My skin crawled where I'd touched it, as if something had passed between us. The room knew I was here. I could feel its attention, heavy and suffocating, pressing in from all sides. There were no doors, no windows, no seams, just endless, undulating flesh, stretching in every direction. The walls seemed to close in, shrinking the space, making it hard to breathe. Claustrophobia seized me, icy and absolute, as the living walls pressed closer, as if eager to swallow me whole. I was sealed in, a parasite in the gut of a monster, trapped in a place that was never meant for human life. The only company I had was the constant, maddening beat of its heart, a relentless rhythm that promised I was not alone and never would be, as long as the walls kept breathing. My desperate search for escape ended at a single anomaly, a mirror embedded in the living wall. Its surface was black, absorbing all light, reflecting nothing. Drawn by a force I couldn't explain, I stepped closer. The heartbeat quieted as I approached. The air grew cold. No reflection, just a void staring back. The surface shimmered, flickering with ghostly static. Shapes formed, a memory, the hospital waiting room. My younger self, pale, crying, hands clenched. The doctor entered, face masked in sympathy. We did everything we could. The memory was excruciatingly vivid. I felt the dread, the hollow ache, the world tilting. The mirror forced me to relive it, raw and fresh. It wasn't just showing my past, it was making me feel it all over again. The memory in the mirror twisted. Behind my weeping younger self, a shadow formed. Tall, thin, absolute darkness. It hadn't been there before. It was an intrusion, a corruption. No features, but a cold, predatory awareness radiated from it. It watched, silent, as my family broke. The mirror revealed a hidden truth. The shadow had always been there, unseen. It leaned forward and I felt its gaze on me. Not my past self, but me now. A whisper slithered into my mind. You could have saved him. Venomous words twisted my grief. The scene flickered, now the lake at sunset. Leo, my brother, struggling in deep water. I was on the shore, frozen by fear. The shadow watched from the woods. The mirror showed the moment I failed, and the entity that witnessed it. My greatest shame, now haunted by something far worse. The shadow was part of my story, and it was watching still. The mirror faded, but the guilt lingered, thick, suffocating. It clung to the air, heavy as a storm about to break, pressing down on my chest with every shallow breath I took. Even as the reflection disappeared, the weight of what I'd done, or failed to do, remained, impossible to escape. Whispers echoed in my mind. Your fault. Your fault. The words slithered through the darkness, curling around my thoughts, relentless and cold. They grew louder with every heartbeat until it felt like the shadows themselves were speaking, accusing me from every corner of the room. Each word a cold needle, pressing down on me. The pain was sharp, but it was the certainty behind the whispers that hurt the most. I could feel my fingers digging into the fabric of my shirt, desperate for something solid, something real to hold on to as the guilt gnawed at me. The room's heartbeat pounded in time with the accusation. Every flicker of the light seemed to match the racing of my pulse, as if the very walls were alive, echoing my shame and fear back at me. I squeezed my eyes shut, but the voices were inside me. No matter how tightly I pressed my eyelids together, I couldn't block them out. They were woven into my thoughts, impossible to silence, impossible to ignore. The memory of Leo's face was branded behind my eyelids. His eyes, wide with fear and betrayal, haunted me in the darkness. I saw him every time I closed my eyes, his silent accusation burning brighter than any whisper. Years of denial crumbled, the guilt flooded in. The walls around me seemed to crack and break just as my defenses did, letting the truth pour in like icy water, unstoppable and merciless. The walls pulsed faster, veins darkening, feeding on my despair. It was as if the room itself was alive, thriving on my pain, growing stronger with every regret that surfaced. The air reeked of copper and decay. Every breath tasted of old blood and forgotten memories, the scent of things left to rot in the dark corners of my mind. Fear was a knot in my stomach, but guilt was acid, eating me alive. It burned through every layer of denial, leaving only raw, exposed nerves behind. I could barely stand the sensation, the way it twisted inside me. I stumbled from the mirror, hands over my ears, useless. The voices weren't coming from outside, they were inside, echoing in my skull, impossible to outrun or drown out. The whispers became a chorus. You were scared, you let him die. Every word was true. Their voices overlapped, a relentless tide of blame, each accusation sharper than the last, each one cutting deeper into my soul. I hadn't jumped in, I hadn't screamed until it was too late. My inaction was a wound that would never heal. A moment I replayed over and over, wishing I could change it, knowing I never would. The guilt was alive, a parasite in this living room. It crawled through the shadows, feeding on my fear, growing stronger with every second I spent alone in the dark. The darkness wasn't just around me, it was inside, whispering my name. It knew my secrets, my failures, and it would never let me forget them. The shadows reached for me, cold and familiar, promising I would never escape. I was drowning in it. The guilt, the fear, the memories, they pulled me under and I let them because I knew I deserved it. In that darkness there was no forgiveness, only the endless echo of my own regret. The room changed again as my guilt festered. The light faded, plunging me into a new active darkness. Oily shadows oozed from the walls, crawling across the floor. They moved with purpose, coalescing into living nightmares. Each tendril brought old fears, loneliness, vertigo, childhood terrors. The room was weaponizing my mind, giving form to every fear I'd ever known. The shadows took shape, spiders, hundreds of them, scuttling at my feet. My childhood arachnophobia returned, paralyzing. The walls pressed in, the air grew thin, faces from nightmares floated out, mouths gaping in silent screams. I curled on the floor, surrounded by every terror I'd ever buried. Snakes slithered, dogs growled, the room exhumed every forgotten fright. This was my personal hell, forged from my own psyche. The guilt over Leo was the anchor. These fears were the thousand cuts. I was drowning in a storm of my own creation. As I reached my breaking point, a new light cut through the darkness. A rectangle of white light appeared in the wall, growing brighter. The heartbeat faltered. Shadows recoiled. A door emerged, smooth, featureless, like polished bone. On its surface, a single glowing number 1. The horrors fell silent, held at bay by the door's glow. The door was an offer, a threshold, not an escape. This was only the first stage. To open it meant stepping deeper into the nightmare. The alternative remained trapped with my regrets and fears, left to rot. The choice was clear: stay and surrender, or step forward. The shadows and the mirror waited, reminders of my failures. To stay was to accept their judgment, to be defined by my cowardice. The door was a challenge, a refusal to be trapped by the past. My legs trembled, but I moved toward the light. Each step was monumental, the shadows hissing but unable to touch me. I was no longer running from my fears. I was walking toward something new. I reached the threshold, the white light warm on my skin. My hand hovered over the door. I didn't know what lay beyond, but it had to be better than this prison. I chose to move forward, to face whatever came next. The door was not freedom, but it was hope, and I stepped through.